Hi friends, welcome back for a brand new video. Today we are going to do a big birthday book haul. I celebrated my 24th birthday on the 31st of October, and of course my family spoiled me with loads of money. You know, la tunasse, le flouze, la moulaga, les pépettes. And of course, as a very responsible adult, the first thing I did was, well, spend it all on books. And here's the big pile. Quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah, I went quite crazy this year. I usually don't buy this many books, but let's be honest, this year I went kinda insane and mentally ill, and books are quite as expensive as therapy, so it counts, and I got carried away. Some of these books are sequels or part of book series, therefore I'm not going to spoil you by giving you the summary, but instead I'm going to tell you about the first book of the series and simply tell you how I felt about it. So let's get on with it! First, I got myself the paperback edition of The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, which is a retelling of the Chinese legend of Changhe, the Moon Goddess. I'm sorry in advance for the way I pronounced it. And as you can see, this cover is absolutely stunning, so I was immediately attracted to it, the way a magpie is attracted to shining objects, really. And the reviews were really good, so I'm intrigued. This story follows Qingyin, a young girl who lives on the moon with her mother. She one day discovers that she has magical powers and makes her existence known to the Celestial Emperor, the man who actually exiled her mother on the moon for stealing his elixir of immortality. I still don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that she stole it, but I'm gonna find out. And this way, Qingyin has to flee her home and leaves her mother behind. Unfortunately, her mother gets captured by the Celestial Emperor, and to save her, Qingyin embarks on a perilous journey filled with treacherous creatures and mystical people. So, will she be able to save her mother? We'll find out. Next, we have Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I've been wanting to read this author for so long, and I've been following him on Twitter for all that, yes, but I never got a chance to actually try out his work, and now there it is. This book follows the story of Yadriel, a young teenage trans boy in a family of brujas, witches, and he struggles to be accepted by his family regarding his gender, and he proves himself, or at least he tries to prove himself by being a brujo, and to do that he tries to summon the soul of his deceased cousin, who unfortunately was murdered, and he aims at actually freeing his spirit. Personally, I think I would have gone for straight A's to try and impress my parents, but to each their own. But here's the thing, Yadriel actually messes up and summons the ghost of Julian Diaz, one of the popular boys from his school. And the thing is, well, Julian Diaz doesn't want to go back to death. No, our boy wants revenge. I think. I hope. I love revenge stories. And well, they're gonna have to work together to find out what happened, and who knows what's gonna happen next. Next in line, we got Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I'll be fully honest with you, the only reason I bought this book is because one of my Bookstagram mutual, Suheila, well, she talked about this book for months, and to the point where another Bookstagrammer I follow, Amandine, actually gently made fun of her for that, until Amandine read the book and actually posted an apology video apologizing to Suheila for the way she made fun of her. So when I entered Shakespeare & Co. as part of my Parisian pilgrimage, I saw this book and bought it on the spot. Yes, even without reading the summary, which is something I actually never do because of, the trigger warnings and everything. Well, I used to not read the trigger warnings, but now I do everything, the summary, the trigger warnings, all of that. However, I didn't feel like it was a waste of money to buy this book because I trusted Suheila regarding her taste, and when I read the summary, I was also hooked, so not a loss at all. In Divine Rivals, we follow the story of Iris Winnow, an 18-year-old girl who struggles to keep her family together in the middle of a war. Her mother is an addict and her brother is actually missing from the front lines, so not a good start for Iris. But her only option, and her only hope really, is to get promoted at the Oath newspaper, the newspaper where she's working as a journalist. To distress, Iris actually does something that my therapist recommends to me, and I still don't do despite her pleas, aka writing letters to her brother. But instead of sending those letters, she actually just slips them under her wardrobe. Here's the thing, those letters don't stay where they're supposed to be, and they end up at the hands of Roman Kitts, her rival at the newspaper. But suddenly, that guy, he writes back, anonymously of course. And all of this writing back and forth, always anonymously, will forge a connection between them that will transcend everything we may know and actually lead Iris to the battlefield. So what will happen to those little two lovebirds? Because yes, I'm pretty sure they're going to end up dating, but I want to see how it turns out. And from what I get from this is going to be a series and not a standalone, and the next book is coming soon, if I'm correct. So, yeah. I trust you, Suhaila. Please don't disappoint me. Next, we got the first 3 books of the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series by Toshiketsu Kawaguchi. I bought the set of 3 books because it was actually cheaper than buying them separately. And I know there is a 4th book, but I want to read those 3 books and see if I like them before actually acquiring the 4th book. So this book series is about a coffee shop or cafe, for those who want to be fancy, which is hidden away in Tokyo, and this coffee shop has a particularity, which is you can actually travel back in time when you drink their coffee. However, there are 2 rules mainly. One, you have to be seated in a peculiar seat, and the second, you must come back before your coffee gets cold. This book series is actually a collection of short stories from the customers we are going to follow, mainly because they have regrets and they want to make amends or fix things which they can no longer fix because, well, it's over and you can't go back in the past, except this time you can. So I think this is going to make me feel things, and I actually need that lately, you know, shed a few tears, have a mental breakdown, things like that. Next in line, we have A Study in Drowning by Eva Reed, and I've actually started reading this book and it is so good! I'm halfway through and my god, I just can't leave it alone. Like right now, it itches me. I just want to go back in bed and read because it is so good. In this book, we follow the story of Effie, a young girl who loves fairy tales and was actually plagued with weird visions ever since she was a child. And now she's an architectural student. You might wonder why not a literature student? Well, that's because she's a woman. Yeah, good start. So when she finds out that her now deceased favorite author has a family, and this family wants to rebuild a house that used to belong to the author, well, Effie tries her best as an architecture student to win this contest, and she does. So she gets sent to the south of her country, Lear. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but I'm trying. And she goes there and finds out that the house is a mess. But she's trying her best anyway, and she finds out also that she's not the only person being there. There she meets Preston, a literature student, a man of course. And this guy has a particularity. He's actually from Argent, you know, the country which they're at war with. So much fun. However, when Preston begs her to work with him and makes promises Effie cannot refuse, they end up working together and unravel secrets, which Effie might find dangerous, and her favorite author may not be everything that they seem. So far, this book is an absolute wonder. I'll be fully honest with you, my first experience with Dark Academia was with Babel by R.F. Kuang, so let me tell you, the bar was high. But so far, it's meeting my expectations, and I am so glad I finally got the chance to read Eva Reed's books, because she usually uses themes and trigger warnings which contain sexual violence, and you know me, I can't read those books. It makes me so mad, and I have terrible issues regarding anger control, so I can't read those books. And A Study in Drowning does have trigger warnings, however, so far They are what I actually can read, but like it's the limit. So please beware of the trigger warnings and take care of yourself. And also, if you can, please read this book. And now it's time to dive into some book series. First, I got myself the second volume of She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. He Who Drowned the World. And look at this beautiful cover. It's such a masterpiece. I almost regret having, the first volume in paperback because it deserves to be in hardback. She Who Became the Sun follows the story of Ju, a young girl who lives in China under the Mongol rule. She lives with her father and her brother, and she actually is destined for nothingness. At least that's what an oracle said, while her brother, Chu Chongba, is actually destined for greatness. But here's the thing, her brother ends up dying. Wow, so much for greatness. Ju actually sees the death of her brother as an opportunity and decides to take over his identity to become greatness because she was destined for nothingness. So she joins a sanctuary to ensure her own survival and becomes a monk. However, she has to leave the sanctuary because it is destroyed by the Mongols once they found out that the sanctuary is actually supporting the rebellion. So when that happens, Ju decides to take action in her own hands and try to drive the Mongol out of China. So we're going to follow her story, and this is the second volume and allegedly the last, so I can't wait to see how it's going to end because this book is just so good. I mean, the first one, but I hope this one is going to be as well. And let's be honest, it's everything I wanted Game of Thrones to be. Because to me, fantasy shouldn't have to always have sexual violence. It was so annoying when Game of Thrones just showed up, sexual assault scenes as if it were nothing. Just no, it doesn't need to be this way. And this book series is just perfect because you can tell misogyny exists. Okay, why not? But it doesn't need to be this violent. And this book is just perfect because it has political twists, it has just a sprinkle of magic on top of it, but it is so well told, you're hooked. I was hooked, so... Next, I got myself Godslayers, which is the second volume of Gearbreakers by Zoe Hanamikuta, which is her debut novel, if I'm correct. In this book, we follow two point of views. The first one being Eris, a young rebel who specializes in destroying wind-ups from the inside, wind-ups being giant mechas that the Empire of Godolia uses to expand its tyrannical rule. And the second point of view is Sona. She is a young pilot for the wind-up program, but she actually has a secret. She infiltrated the wind-up program with the goal to actually destroy it from the inside as well. A little bit like Eris. You see the parallels. But one day Eris is captured while she's on a mission and she ends up in one of the Godolian jails, aka next to Sona. So they meet and Sona's secret is, spilled out, and Eris decides to trust her and form an alliance with her, and we follow their adventures. So even though the first book of the series wasn't one of my favorite reads ever, I still thoroughly enjoyed it, and even though the writing was, for starters, a bit weak, when a certain scene happened, things unraveled properly and I felt that the writing was far more confident, and the characters in the story were both interesting enough that I want to read the second book, and there was a cliffhanger at the end of volume 1 that made me raise many questions, so hope we're going to be satisfied with this second volume. And finally, I got my hands on Foul Heart Huntsman by Chloe Gong, which is the second volume of the Foul Lady Fortune series. While reading These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends isn't technically necessary to understand the series, I would personally recommend to read it to understand the lore behind the character of Rosalind and, many Easter eggs and actually relationships between certain characters. So if you can, please read These Violent Delights Delights and Our Violent Ends before tackling into Foul Lady Fortune. So Foul Lady Fortune follows the story of Rosalind Lang, who is actually the cousin of Juliet Tsai, who was the protagonist of These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends. So this story is set in 1931, and Rosalind, after a strange experiment, ends up immortal. She basically doesn't need to sleep, she doesn't age, she doesn't get sick, she can't be murdered, things like that. So with her newfound skills, she decides to become a spy for the nationalist government and tries to fight the Japanese imperialism, which is trying to take over China. One of Rosalind's missions as Fortune is to infiltrate a Japanese newspaper, and to do so and be less suspicious, she has to team up with Orion Hong, a young man who is also a spy, and they have to pose as a newlywed couple. However, this close proximity is not to Rosalind's liking, because she has secrets of her own that she does not want to spill, and Orion is a little bit suspicious as well, so will the newlywed couple be successful in their mission, or will things go south? Well, we have a second volume, so you might guess where this is going. I had adored These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends. I absolutely adored the story, so of course I picked up Foul Lady Fortune knowing it was basically a sequel to this first duology, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because Rosalind was a very interesting character to begin with for me, and I was happy to see her being more developed throughout this new story, although it still follows the first one. And usually I'm not a fan of fake dating, those kind of tropes where there is forced proximity, because usually the man invades the privacy of the woman, and I hate this. It's always how it goes. And while Orion was not entirely an exception, the way he was written and the fact that he changed throughout the book, well, it made him a lot less insufferable, and I actually ended up enjoying him and rooting for this small couple. So, will things go south during the second book? I don't know. Maybe, well, given the ending of the first book, I know it's going to be a wild ride, but I've heard mixed reviews about Fallout Huntsman. This is a full mouth to say. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I heard mixed reviews, so I don't know if I'm going to be satisfied with the ending the way I did in Our Violent Ends, but nonetheless, I'm going to give it a try. And that's it for this massive book haul. With all of these books, I don't think I will be book deprived for a while. Is this a thing we say? Book deprived? I don't know, but I kinda like it. Anyway, I am still going to be a very slow reader due to the fact that I am severely mentally and physically ill, and I also still have a 9-to-5 job. Yeah, I think this beautiful stack of books will actually last me through next year, so I'll be fine on that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't hesitate to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, that's good for the algorithm, and share with a friend. And don't hesitate also to comment your last 5-star book read, because I'm actually curious and I'm always looking for new recs, so maybe your favorite read will become my favorite read, so don't hesitate to go for that. The only thing is, please be mindful of the trigger warnings, aka usually trigger warnings surrounding sexual assault or sexual violence in general. I am not reading those books. So yeah, that's just my personal limit. In the meantime, take care of yourself and I'll be seeing you around. Bye!